We're back. Interjections 112. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Inter lose to a Scudetto rival, falling 3-1 to Napoli. An embarrassing, all too predictable performance. I'm your host, Andrew. I've got the whole crew with me here today. Jay, Mikko, Irfan, and Sterling. Irfan, I'll start with you. I'm reading that Asllani fell down during the Torino match and his mistake led to them conceding a goal. Your thoughts?
I actually had no idea that even occurred. It doesn't sound right. Seems like fake news. But you know what? Asllani could have been used in our midfield yesterday because the current midfield didn't perform all that well, which I'm sure we'll get into. But
Would have been 4-1.
Yeah. Of course.
I'm Team Sterling on this one.
Yeah.
On that note, Sterling, welcome back. How are you doing?
Oh man, we gotta stop meeting like this. This is another terrible weekend ruiner of a large Serie A game. It just seems like our specialty over the last couple of years. It's kind of crazy how we just can't seem to win when it matters the most in the league, at least. So let's talk about it. Let's dissect what's mentally wrong with this group of disappointing millionaires.
Mikko, daylight savings in Finland last night. I presume you will not see the sun for the next 6 months now as a result. So how are you holding up?
Barely. Yeah, I think that will be the case. And Inter is not helping. But on a serious note, I was pretty irritated yesterday. Not so much anymore. I'm kind of over it already and ready to do a deep dive what happened and so on. So let's go.
For those of you keeping track at home, Mikko is in fact calm. I'll go ahead and get this one out of the way. Jay, please provide us your thoughts on Milan drawing Pisa.
Yeah, it's funny you mention it because although Milan somehow dropped points against another relegation shitter, somehow, somewhere, some way, someone managed to salvage it right at the death, right? Some nobody, I can't remember this guy's name, Akhenaten or something, Tutankhamen, scored some 30-meter goal in off the post right at the death, and
3 guys offside.
And it goes into what we're seeing here, the trends here, because at Inter, it just feels like there is no one to rescue the team when it's needed. And this is, at this stage, I may as well just go into my spiel about the game. But listen, we talk about McTominay's world-class goal and another individual brilliant goal from Frank Zambangisa. And, these goals are rare, and McTominay would score that goal once out of 100 attempts. And that was our excuse when that Adzic guy scored a pile driver in the 95th minute as well. Some 18-year-old kid for Juve scoring a winner in the Derby d'Italia. That's how these things go, guys. The special players step up at special moments and score special goals. And our players, maybe they're just not as special as some Inter fans think, but our guys are just not doing that. Lautaro had a chance and had more than one chance, and one time he shot straight at the keeper, the other time he kind of scuffed it wide, and his highlight reel from that game was gesticulating at Conte only to get his ass handed to him moments later. Barella, when's the last time Barella had a truly good game against any opponent higher than like a Lazio or Atalanta level? When's the last time he played well against Milan or Juve or any of these big European teams? We seem to lose game after game after game against these big teams. And now following this latest loss, I think this stretches to 10 plus games now against these direct Scudetto contending teams that we haven't beaten, going into last season's infamous unable to beat any big team season. And there seems to be something fundamentally broken. No one is stepping up in these big games, and we've just seen it for a season plus now, and it's gotten to a point where you can't keep putting it down to these individual moments of brilliance. McTominay scored a fluke goal. Adzic scored a fluke goal. Yildiz scored a worldie. How many times can we keep saying that before we have to look at the facts, which are that Inter has not beaten a direct Scudetto rival in like 18 months or something like that. It's a really big concern. That kind of mentality loss is my biggest concern here. But on one tactical note, I just want to say I think the game was lost when Kivu took Bonnie out for some reason, because it pretty much condemned us to play long balls to Pio. And look, guys, we all love Pio. We're all excited about the idea of what he can become. But as for what he is now, he's kind of like a young Petagna at best. Let's be real. This is not some Ibrahimovic regen or something. It's not some Luca Toni just because he's got some good hold up skills and a bit of smarts to him. This is not a guy who's ready to be like a massive protagonist in any Scudetto contending team. The less said about Lautaro, the better. And I think this game was such a curious one in that every time Napoli came forward, we seemed to just shit the bed, and they seemed to just score these bullshit goals out of nowhere. But like I said, at some point, some way, somehow, these guys just get it done. And as kind of weirdly esoteric and intangible as that sounds, it doesn't sound, it's not grounded in XG, it's not grounded in tactics, it's not grounded in anything that you can quantify in stats like progressive passes, and forward passes per 90 and duels won and all this bullshit. There's just something intrinsic, inherent, something vaguely psychological within a player who wants it more than the other guy, gives them that extra bit of self-confidence to smash it into the corner, aiming for the corner instead of just safely trying to get it on target because you're nervous about missing. It's these small things that make the difference between winners and losers. And how many games in a row are Inter going to be the losers in this?
Yeah, it comes down to inefficiency. And this game, the past 18 months, as you said, can all be summarized with the word inefficiency, because we dominated Napoli in that first half, and we did not deserve to be down to Napoli at the break. But this team, and Lautaro specifically, just continue to let us down in these spots. And you get 2 posts from Bastoni and Dumfries, and Lautaro misses the easiest chance he's going to get this season, one of the easiest chances he's going to get this season, and you cannot fail to convert 3 chances against a Conte-led side and think you're going to win the match. And I blame Lautaro, man. Like, if he scores that goal, it's a completely different game, and instead he rushed himself. He fired an easy shot right at the keeper, and you just knew it was going to be one of those type of matches when he when he screwed up just such an easy chance. And this is the trend for us. We were too inefficient. Lautaro takes too many chances to score a goal. Thuram is more efficient than Lautaro. He's always hurt. And on the flip side, I read the stat yesterday. This is especially mind-boggling. Napoli and Juve produced 7 shots on target against us, and all 7 of those shots went in. And I'm not saying it's summer. I'm saying it's the defense. I'm saying it's the team. I'm saying it's the mentality, because to allow 7 goals on 7 shots is insane. I'll turn it over to whoever wants to go next. Any thoughts on this team's fragile mentality?
Yeah, well, one thing I'll say, and I think it is something that we should definitely touch on, is that the game yesterday was influenced by a massive refereeing error. That's the one thing I will say, is that I do think that error leads to the match being played differently. I think if we look at the way that we played the first half before that non-existent penalty call, that now everyone's coming out, even people in Italy who work for the broadcast, who are there on behalf of the referee association, or whoever it may be, are all saying that this should have been called back by VAR, shouldn't have been called in the first place. It's ridiculous that a line judge can make that decision through bodies when the center referee is right there and didn't make the call. But it is kind of an outrageous situation that seems to happen to us with the refereeing, and that from a tactical standpoint, purely, it does change this match, because that means that we have to play with a higher line, and the higher line is what ends up ultimately killing us because we just don't have the players for it. No matter how smart we try to be about it, no matter how we try and place people to stop a counter. We're talking about guys like Cherby in the back line who are deep into their 30s and who just aren't that quick. And that ultimately does play a role in the way that this match pans out. Now, with that being said, you know, bad things happen in matches, and this team has a tendency to let one bad decision or one bad moment make them lose their heads completely. I mean, Kivu spoke about it in the post match. We wasted a lot of energy thinking about how we were done wrong, and then subsequently we're really amped up. We're nervous. We're anxious, and it kind of boils over in the situation with Lautaro and Conti, right? Where Dumfries and Lautaro are getting into it with them on the sidelines. When again, like this is a match that we're losing. We're chasing. We're so concerned with what he's saying, and after that, we basically just stopped playing the game completely. I thought it would maybe a situation where it would fire us up, amp us up a little bit more. It did the complete opposite, and again, that goes back to the mentality of this team. I, I can't think of a team that is better at giving teams confidence than Inter. Every big match, it seems like we start the game exactly how the other team would want us to. Napoli came into this game losing 6-2 in the midweek to a Dutch team. 6-2. I mean, they were dead to rights, looking like we could come, step on their necks, and potentially put them into a crisis. And, instead of us playing our normal game and trying to take it to them, we basically played the game extremely slow, at their pace, nothing but backwards passes. We were way too respectful of them, and it let them build confidence and get into the game. When if we would have taken an early goal, or I mean, and we did have our chance through Lautaro, if we would have taken an early chance, we probably could have seen this team crumble. But we didn't force the issue. We sat back and we let the game kind of unfold the way that it did. And you know, we've done this a lot in these big matches. Anytime that it looks like we're a favorite, this team can't handle it. For some reason, this team just, whenever they feel like there is an obligation to win, especially in a big match, they just shit the bed. And it's just hard to reconcile it unless you look at the team's mental makeup and our biggest players. Lautaro, unfortunately, he's been a problem in big matches. Barella has been a problem in big matches. I mean, Bastoni, yesterday, it wasn't good enough. These are the guys that we look to and say these are our world-class players, and they don't play world-class in big moments. And so you have to kind of question, are they really world-class? Are they system players? How good are we really? So it's very disappointing. I wish I had all the answers. I think that there's definitely some personnel issues as well, but I do think that we're going to need a shake-up here in some way at some point, and I think it definitely needs to be some personnel changes, especially in our back line and especially in the goalkeeper position. But we may even have to think about, do these guys have to be automatic starters on this team moving forward, or is it also time to potentially have a shakeup there as well?
I was extremely disappointed in the core of players you referenced, Bastoni, Lautaro, Barella yesterday. This was Bastoni's worst game in an Inter kit. He was caught out numerous times, and part of it is because he's covering for a Cherby who was on skates for most of the game. But this was truly an awful performance from Bastoni. Lautaro I've already hit on, and Barella. I do agree with Jay. Barella has not done enough in these Scudetto matches. The last 5 dropped points against Milan, the games against Juve, the games against Napoli. He has not done enough. We need him to create something, and he didn't create anything yesterday because aside from set pieces and giveaways from Napoli, we did not create enough yesterday. And it's the same story. We always create these chances off of set pieces, and if we can't get a goal off them, the defense of the other team sits deeper and counters us, and we start to struggle. But you would have hoped that Kivu coming in might have fixed some of these mentality problems. And I don't want to say Kivu was outcoached yesterday. Tactically, starting a Cherby turned out to be a wrong decision. But really, what this game showed us that this team is mentally weak, and changing managers can't change that. It's the players who need to change, because it doesn't matter. Kivu, they can rave about him all they want in the media. They can blame Inzaghi as they want in the media. He's new. The only thing still constant from last season is the players, and we have the exact same problem. I will also say this is generally, we do not complain about referees on this podcast. If this is your first time listening, if you're new, whatever, we do not complain about refereeing decisions. Yesterday was a joke. That was not a penalty. It was never a penalty. Every pundit in Italy says it's not a penalty. The problem is, and the reason why I can't make myself more upset about it, is because I can't tell you it would have massively changed the eventual outcome, because this team is a bunch of chokers. Mikko, I know you're fired up about the penalty, or you were fired up about the penalty. So if you want to hit on that first, by all means.
Yeah, I think Sterling hit the spot there. I understand the point that, okay, there are kind of bad situations happening. We need to overcome them during the match. And the reaction to this situation, it was bad. We need to admit that, and Kivu admitted that. He said in the post-match conference, he mentioned how, or was it some Gazzetta report, that even during the halftime break, they were still like onto that situation, that ref call, how unfair it was, and that needs to change somehow, that kind of an attitude. And I truly hope Kivu has some kind of an impact on that. Maybe longer run. Maybe it's not possible like in the next few months, but hopefully during the season he can kind of change that attitude, how to approach situation, or how to continue from a situation when you are getting kind of, you are getting the short stick in certain situations. But like I said, Sterling said it well. That wrong call changed the game, because during the first half we were the better team, and I would say even about 60, even 70 minutes before we made the midfield substitutions, I think we were the better team, even though Napoli scored. I think they scored those 3 goals during that period, but they didn't do much in that match apart from those goals, which started from the wrong penalty call, which kind of changed the whole dynamic of the game. Napoli didn't have to attack at all anymore. They just need to defend, and Conte knows how to organize a defense, especially when you don't have to even score a goal anymore. You are leading. You have everything set up. You just defend, and they did that well, especially in the second half, when admittedly we kind of fell apart there. But I think a lot of got to do with the kind of the emotions running, and the inability to move forward from this wrong call. I don't know if maybe some calls from previous season plays a part in this, because I think we got quite fucked over by multiple times last season with some dubious calls, some non-penalty calls, like at least 6, maybe 7. including one against Napoli, by the way. So I don't know if that plays a part there, that this kind of mentality is just it can't handle anymore those those cases. But I truly hope that Kivu can, like I said, he can work on this, and I think he had a great kind of post match conference when he wants to kind of try to stop this usual reaction what's in Italy, like cry and complain whenever something bad happens which isn't in your favor. And I agree that I respect his opinion. I agree that on that, but I also want the club to defend the team and the coach. And I've been very critical towards Marotta about these cases when he hasn't defended the club previously. Now he did. Yesterday he did, which was a surprise, but that was a pleasant surprise. And I want him to keep going with that route, but at the same time I respect what Kivu said and what he wants to bring to the table in terms of the kind of the attitude and approach to these situations, like how to kind of manage your emotions and try to keep on going, because after the call has been made and you can't affect that anymore. You try to kind of keep hold of yourself and just try to forget that and keep going, because that's the reality. You can't change the decision once it's been made. Apparently, even if we have these VAR tools and everything, they seem incapable of doing the correct decision once in a while, like yesterday.
I want to change course a little bit here. Irfan, you're very fed up with online Inter fan at the moment. Can you talk us through what your grievances are with online Inter fan and how you're feeling about things?
Yeah, it's a little frustrating. I feel like, and this is true of I think anything, but whenever there's like some sort of online ecosystem, it just turns into like this race to the bottom, this like really irritating sort of trolling. I think to an extent it's like a defense mechanism of some fans to deal with the disappointment, but then it also just becomes this like kind of juvenile, like infantile desire to just get some sort of like response from people and get some engagement. And it's what's really bizarre to me is that, you know, we're fans of a soccer team, fans of a football club, and it seems really odd to me that when you're trying to just, you know, talk to or be part of a community that is supposed to be pretty ardent fans of the same club, that you know, the way people deal with disappointment and the way people deal with you know, a bad performance is by just kind of trolling each other, or, you know, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. It shouldn't bother me, I know. Like it's just par for the course now, and basically every single one of our discourses, whatever it is. But like it's especially bizarre to me for a sports team that people would just take to trolling. And what's frustrating is like a lot of times I feel like, you know, we'll probably have listeners listening to this podcast who are very, you know, passionate Inter fans, and when they listen after a loss, like how would it feel if like we're sitting around just kind of trolling other Inter fans for being like stupid, or like for being like, you know, why do you support this club, and Milan is so much better, and Juve is so much better, and Napoli's going to win the title, and like just like this hyperventilation that occurs for attention. It's like it's very tedious, just really annoying. And obviously I concede it's more annoying because the team has disappointed me, but rather than seeing fans who I could commiserate with, like half of them are just fucking children, and like that kind of gets really annoying. But you just kind of self-regulate and you don't engage and you don't like listen to it. But I wish we had a stronger community of true Inter patriots. Let's just say that. But anyway, one thing I wanted to say, you guys touched on, it's true. Like sometimes without data, it's hard to fully understand because you just feel like you feel this way. But the last time we beat Napoli in Serie A was December 3rd, 2023. The last time we beat Juventus in Serie A was February 3rd, 2004. The last time we beat Milan in Serie A was April 22nd, 2024. And the last time we beat Bologna in Serie A was March 9th, 2024. Now we've drawn, but you're talking about well over a year and a half since we've beaten any of these clubs in Serie A, and that's ridiculous. And what's even more ridiculous is that each of the last 4 times we've beaten each of these teams, the goals have come from, in the case of Napoli, Hakan, Barella, and Thuram. Against Juventus, a Gatti own goal. Against Milan, Acerbi and Thuram. And against Bologna, Bisek. Like it's like where is Lautaro on all of these things? I think he had 1 or 2 assists. He did have a very important goal for us against Napoli in like the Super Copa or something like that when we beat them. But other than that, like you're talking about your captain, you're talking about your striker, you're talking about your supposed leader of the club, and against these games that really really matter, that are easily like either 4 or 6 point swings, you can't even manage to score goals. And then what really frustrated me, and again, you talked about this already, is that you're going to sit there and you're going to chirp at Conte and you're going to act all tough. And then you're going to go over and then just completely do nothing for the rest of the match. Like, if anything, that fired up Napoli's players more. You got to understand, you've been living in comfort for like the last 7 or 8 matches. You've been like, pretty easily gliding to wins. This team, this Napoli team, has been just hearing it for like a week. They've been getting crushed like constantly by their fans, by their media, by their coach, no doubt. And you're going to go there and you're going to try to fire them up even more like that. It just, it's like, it was just so kind of just losing the plot. And then the fact that you were doing that without absolutely knowing that you have the mentality and your players have the mentality to back it up on the pitch. Like, imagine how good it must have felt for Anguissa to score that last goal. Like, here you guys were like chirping, making a big scene, fighting on the sidelines, and then he just goes out and tools you. I've been reluctant in the past to really lean into this whole we have a weak mentality as a team kind of thing. And I still think a lot of it is not just the weak mentality. I think a lot of it starts with our midfield just getting bullied by better clubs. Like, that's just the way it sort of works. Because again, we had the mentality against Barcelona to go out, like Jay was talking about, like certain players and moments just like, deliver. And like we had that moment against Barcelona in one of the biggest stages we've been in, where we had Acerbi and Frattesi score late goals. So clearly, like, the players are capable of it. So, I don't know if it's just mentality, but one thing I've seen though is that against these better Serie A clubs, our midfield just gets rocked. They just get dominated. And Andrew and I, we talked about this when we were previewing the episode. Like, part of the reason Napoli gives us so much trouble is because Anguissa and McTominay have just rocked us, have just owned us. And they did that again yesterday. So I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about all of this. It's like just kind of stream of conscious, getting irritating. But yeah, I just, it's a very frustrating loss. And it's a very frustrating time to be an Inter fan when people react this way after a loss.
Well, I think that's a good segue there, Irfan, because I completely agree that our midfield is soft, and really, we talk about mentality. I do think mentality is a huge piece of this as well, but physically, we're not a very strong team, especially in the midfield. And in yesterday's match, we were just getting bullied. I mean, we could not make anything happen and build up play whatsoever, especially when they went up 3-1. And I think a lot of that has to do with the personnel on this team, and that's why I think we got to talk about our management a little bit here, because we all talked about in the summer how The center back position was a massive issue. Management disagreed with that. They decided to keep Achirbi and DeVry for another season. And what we're starting to see, and especially this week between the performance in midweek by DeVry and now the performance at the weekend by Achirbi, we don't really have a starting level center back anymore. Achirbi shouldn't be a starter at this level. DeVry has not been a starter at this level for many years. And we really don't have a guy who you would feel comfortable with throwing out against any opposition. We have guys that can be good in a certain situation. I do think DeVry probably would have had a better game against Neres than Achirbi did, and I think Achirbi would have had a better game in the midweek than DeVry did against David. But we have horses for courses. We really don't have a guy who we can start in any type of a situation and feel very confident that he's going to give us a performance. And that goes down to the management. If we as the fans can point and say, hey, there's a problem there, but the management decides that there's not, and now we have Achirbi chasing shadows because he's trying to play a high line. I mean, it's hard to blame the man or the coach. The coach can only do so much. We really do have a personnel issue that's starting to rear its ugly head. And to go back to the midfield, I mean, if you remember, Kivu had a very specific ask for what he wanted in a midfielder. He basically was asking for an Anguissa. He was asking for a physical midfielder that could come in and help us with how soft we are in that midfield. And most likely that player should have been the replacement for Mkhitaryan. And we looked around, obviously the Kone deal, we tried, it didn't work out. No fault of the management there, but to turn around then and go to Diouf, and Diouf can't see the field. He's the 7th choice out of 7 midfielders. And the guy apparently is not mentally ready for Serie A. And then the other guy who's not mentally ready for Serie A, Luis Enrique, I mean, I hate to say it, man, but that guy's looking like he's born to be a flop. I mean, he's been eased in, he's been given opportunities. I mean, I'm not really sure what Kivu's supposed to do with that. I mean, the guy just looks scared of his own shadow. I see technique there. I think that there could be a player there, but again, he seems mentally really soft. Like he like if he doesn't win his first dribble of the match, he's done. If he doesn't get his first tackle of the match, he's done. Physically, he's not looking for contact. He's avoiding it. When he gets the ball, you're worried he's going to turn it over every single time he touches it. I mean, there's just zero confidence there. And those two guys are 50 million euro, and we're a team that doesn't spend. That 50 million euros is precious to us, and it seems like so far we may have squandered that, and that's really disappointing. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of issues with this team and their construction, as well as the mentality, right? So I think we have to also give some blame to the management here. Honestly, the person I give the least blame to in all of this is Kivu. I think Kivu has actually been fairly impressive, and I think he's doing the best that he can given the situation. And let's remember, guys, it's not all doom and gloom here. We are 3 points off the lead in Serie A. We have the ability to potentially turn this around still. There's plenty of matches left. I mean, there's 30 games left. So, it's not any reason to panic, but, there's obviously some real issues here that Kivu as a coach is not going to be able to address no matter how he coaches. And it's not because Kivu's not good enough. It's not because Kivu's not experienced enough, because these issues were here last year with Inzaghi as well. And we all agreed that Inzaghi was the best at doing the most with the least. And he still was struggling he was hitting a ceiling with his team every time we got into these big matches, especially the big matches that we were expected to win. Now, Irfan, you mentioned obviously the Barcelona match last year. And I would also throw the Bayern match in there last year as, hey, we can show that, this team has mentality. But again, the big difference with those matches is that there was no expectation on these players. Nobody expected them to win. And that's why they were able to play at the high level. Whenever there's an expectation, this team just folds every single time.
I'm very critical of Morata at this juncture. He has not had a good Mercato in years. I always blamed Zhang and Suning and the ridiculous financial consequences of past decisions. But this summer, Morata had a serious budget. He had serious amounts of money to spend. And unfortunately, it appears the only hit from the lot is going to be Bonnie. Sucic looks like a fine player, but he's not ready for this level. You talked about the complete busts that Luis Enrique and Diouf appear to be, and just ignoring the glaring holes in this team at center back. I talked about the need for a fifth striker. Well, Jay hit on this. When you can't have Pio and Lautaro on the pitch together at the same time, they're incompatible. It is you have two true number 9s playing next to each other in the system. It's not going to work. That ultimately goes on Morata as well. And when you're working with as thin of margins as we are working with, you have to be flawless. We committed several errors, and now we're dealing with the consequences of it. So I'm not surprised in the slightest this Mercato didn't work out. This is par for the course. We finally got rid of the dead weight in attack, and guess what? Now we have a bunch of dead weight in the midfield between Diouf, who isn't ready for this level, Zielinski, who is absolutely awful, Fertesi, who goes invisible all the time. Like, there was just not enough impact coming from this midfield, and I do agree that is the reason why we keep, aside from the mentality, and we've talked a lot about the mentality today, but the reason why we keep having these major mismatches in these big key games is because our midfield is simply not good enough. And now Mkhitaryan's hurt, and God only knows how we're going to weather this storm if he misses any time, because we don't have anyone on this team capable of playing in his position at a high level.
I do think Lautaro and Pio can play together, but as you saw in the Champions League midweek, it's against teams that we're going to have the lion's share of possession, teams
Sure.
against whom we will have all the ball and encroach into their half so that the gap between our ball playing midfielders and the forwards is not so big. But again, not trying to be pedantic or anything, but yeah, against Napoli, when you're not going to have, like, we had more possession than Napoli, sure, but not in like it didn't feel like we were dominating them possession wise. And especially in the second half, when you're playing fast and loose, trying to attack direct via long balls, yeah, Pierre might trap some long balls that Bonnie won't, but at the same time, you can't play him into space like you would with Bonnie. The gap between the midfielders and the forwards is too big. And more to the point, I really want to double down on what I'm saying, that like, as encouraged as we are by Pio and his development and where he is in his career and how talented he seems, let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. Like I said, the level that Pio is playing at now, do you guys really think that's like anything better than like Petagna or something? Like, everyone likes to meme about players like Petagna, these big, clunky, awkward forwards who provide that role of being like a big slab of meat target man without much technical skill. But like, are we seeing that much else here? This is why I was such a big advocate for Lookman, even if we had to break the bank to buy him, because it's not even just a case of like Bonnie and Pio both playing at like relegation or Serie B level prior to this season. You just need that star power. There's just something about the name value of a player like Lookman or a Dybala or something that brings flair and brings belief from other players and brings energy from the fans and all these like little intangible things, not to mention the quality on the pitch. And I just think this management, or rather this ownership, just doesn't get the concept of that. This ownership just lacks that kind of imagination. They lack the kind of fantasy and creativity needed from like an ownership to take a gamble on like a big name, even if it might not make the most sense financially. It's all just very sterile, all just very like unimaginative. It's like playing the slot machines and betting like 20 cents per spin, in the hopes that you somehow win big off like some shit, like low tier bets. Like, that's not how gambling works. You're gonna have to gamble a lot of money to win a lot of money, and these guys, they just feel stingy. and you see it in the Mercato, you see it in the recruitment, and I think it's really going to bite us in the ass. I think we really needed that kind of big name, big energy, big excitement forward signing that Lookman would have been, but you forsake that, and now you end up with a guy who's like a great young prospect, sure, but whose real life level is not that high. Let's be real. And then of course Bonnie, who's playing quite well, but again, this is a guy who, based on how he's playing now, he looks like he's kind of at like Fiorentina level. Let's see how he kind of keeps it up for the rest of the season. I think the more and more the season goes on, we're going to see these issues come to the fore, especially the 50 million wasted on Juve and Enrique.
I do think we're being a bit harsh on Pio there. To call him an Andrea Patagna, I think is really harsh. I think that there is a potentially special player there. I think if you look at a Luca, that's an Andrea Patagna. And I think we're blessed to have Pio in comparison. But I mean, yeah, he's young. He's going to have some bad matches. I think we saw in the midweek as well. He missed an absolute sitter. So he's going to have some growing pains for sure. But, I do think that long term, there is a very good player in there, and certainly one that's a much higher level than the Andrea Patagnas or the Belottis of this world. Just in
He's not a
terms of his
star.
ability to,
He's not a star, and he's not a game
No, not
winner.
yet.
Is my point. That's what I'm
He's
trying to
going
get at.
be. He's going to be.
I mean, hopefully he will be. But yeah, I mean, he's not a star now, but at the same time, right, we also have to be happy that we're for once trying to develop a player from our academy, right? So we always talk about, hey, these other top European clubs, they're able to develop players while winning at the same time. You see it at clubs like, Real Madrid and Barcelona and really even the English clubs. They bring in their young players when they're special, and yeah, they're not stars, but they do manage to turn them into stars, and they allow these kids to play and make mistakes. And in Italy, that never happens. So for once we're doing that. So I'm happy that Pio is in the squad and that we're actually giving him these opportunities in these types of matches, because that is the way that he's going to grow. And yeah, this year it may not always work out in our favor, but there's going to be next year, and there's going to be the following year. And the truth is that a team like Inter's should have been doing this a long time ago, because we can't afford to compete and go out and get these big, sexy names. If we could go out and afford a Lookman, that'd be fantastic. But the truth is he's not here because we couldn't afford to pay whatever Atlanta wanted for him. Or maybe they never were going to sell him. Who knows? But the truth is that we couldn't go out and get the other version of a Lookman because we just couldn't afford it. So,
I don't want to make this a redundant cyclical argument, but I always come down to maybe we could have afforded him if we didn't waste 50 million on the likes of Luis Enrique and Diouf. No?
Come on.
And maybe there's some truth to that, but there's also maybe some truth to the fact that maybe Atalanta was just never going to sell him, and because they never really gave us a true number, right? Now, could we have gone into the market and maybe bought somebody else? I don't know. I don't know who that player would be. That's a sexy name that would have been available for something that is realistically within our reach, right? Because with us, it's not just about the transfer fee. It's also about the wages. And it's like, who are we going to sign that's a big, sexy name that's also going to agree to the wages? Because the only other player out there that I think maybe would have been realistic would have been Openda. And we can see how that's been going so far for Juventus, right? So, I get what you're saying, Jay, and I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I think in reality, Pio is obviously not the true issue here, and I just don't know who that star player would have been other than a Lookman, and I think we made a legitimate chance as a club to sign him.
Should have been Nico Paz. Mika's going to tell me that he was too expensive, but I don't buy that. I think we should have gotten him.
Real Madrid controls him, not Como. Real Madrid's not letting that kid go for anything.
They're not even going to play that guy.
Not even 5 dinners at Zanetti's restaurant.
Mikko, it's been a second here. Get in here. What are you thinking?
Yeah, about Pio, I'll quickly comment that he didn't have a great game, but and the sub it was what it was. But I don't really think Bonnie had a good game either. Like honestly, none of the players had. and body included. I think it was just to kind of get the fresh legs there. But was it like at our mark when Esposito came in right after the Lautaro Conte debacle on the sidelines? And I don't know, there was like maybe 10 minutes when we had the usual crew there when we did the midfield subs. I think it was over at that point. There was like it was 3-1 and we kind of checked out there. But yeah, PO is not a guy you put in and expect something to happen. You need to create something for him more than you throw the ball to him and he just
Exactly.
creates something. But
We still don't have a
but
Thuram replacement, is what the biggest takeaway is.
the issue is that we didn't have Thuram and we have 4 forwards, so now we had 3 forwards, and it is what it is. As for the Mercato thing, yeah, I guess market could have gone a lot better, but I think there's a lot of kind of we should have done this and that. Henrik was bought like right at the start of the summer, and Suchis as well. That was like, okay, we got these guys now, so it's a bit hard to then afterwards say that, okay, we should have done this, we should have done that, because for example, the Lookman case, that what happened like in July. It didn't happen in June. July was that moment when the opportunity came to us. So it's a lot about timing as well. Diouf, it doesn't look good indeed. We can't use him, but I would give him like 1 season. If we can't use him at all during this whole season, then that's an issue, and that's a big mistake. Because Inter, even with PO, he needs to grow, and we need to kind of spend time with him. But at the same time, this is Inter. We need to win all the time. We just need to do that. So we can't have too many of these kind of project players in our squad. Like we can have maybe few, but not too many. And I would give time to these players, but I acknowledge as well that so far it hasn't looked too good with these 2 guys.
So let me just say really quickly, I think we're like, what, a fourth of the way through the season, maybe a fifth of the way through the season. And you can already see like 4, to me at least, 4 very distinct sort of patterns come up, areas of concern. One is just Lautaro being Lautaro, like disappearing in big games, being completely inefficient in front of the goal. That's going to be a recurring theme, I think, throughout the season, like it has in other seasons. And he hasn't even disappeared yet for a month and a half like he typically does. The other theme that we are seeing is that there's just a real lack of a physical presence in the midfield. Barella, Hakan, Mkhitaryan, Sucic, Zielinski, none of these guys are like physically powerful sort of players who can command some sort of presence in the midfield. They're sort of like, silky smooth, sometimes gritty sort of players, but nothing physically imposing. And we get bullied a lot in the midfield. The third theme we're seeing is this weakness at CCB. We see it with De Vrij. We see it with Acerbi in specific situations. So that's definitely one concern. And then I think the fourth concern is we're talking about it is that there really is no creative kind of force on this team. And I'm not saying like we don't score goals. Like we still have the best attack in Serie A in terms of goals scored, right? But you guys know better than anyone that not all goals and play is a result of some sort of creative player or play. And I think one of the issues we're seeing without the Lookman, without the Nico Paz, without some of these sort of more premier players is like, when the club needs a goal, when we're down, when we need some spark, we don't have that really off the bench. We don't have that with anyone. Maybe Bonnie will be more consistent with that, and when Thuram's healthy, we can depend on Bonnie for a little bit of that. But otherwise, there's just really nothing up and down our roster that I see that like when we're really chasing the game, when we need a goal, you put this guy in and he will either create something or score something. And going back finally to like the point that Jay was making, I couldn't agree more. Like it sounds really lame and cliche, but there are certain players that are sort of aura and tone setting players. And we used to have that with like a Vidal and with a even like with an Alexis Sanchez, right? Like they might not have had the greatest impact on the pitch, but like you could tell in the locker room and when they did play, they brought a certain belief, a certain like dogged mentality. Like we don't have those sorts of
X
players
factor
anymore. Yeah, we just don't have those sorts of players. And so like you talk about mental weakness and then you talk about physical weakness, and it's like, guys, you can only win so many games by scoring off of set pieces and looking at Thuram to pull something out of nothing with his speed. Outside of Thuram, Dumfries, and usually Acerbi, there's no physically strong players on this club, and that's really frustrating.
I think that's the issue we've been talking like during last season and in the summer, that we need that, well, X factor, and we still don't have it. Kivu tries to, or has tried to adjust our game a bit, maybe to make it less of a requirement to have that, now that we didn't got the Lookman, for example. But yeah, it's now that we are talking about this Napoli match, it's hard when you have a team who knows how to defend. It's just hard to do this vertical game when there's no space, when the opponent has trained the defending properly, and when you give them the lead, even in this case it was the ref who gave them the lead. But anyway, on a general note, it's the same issue we still have, and what you guys talked earlier, it all comes down to the personal, a bit all over the place. Like we have the slow defenders, but we want to play high line. Okay, that has worked pretty well so far, but yesterday we got burned pretty bad because of that, because Acerbi is like super slow, and everyone knows that. But still we kind of play this high line, and if we don't play the high line, we don't have the capability maybe to score as many goals because of this lack of this X factor who could be able to kind of get something out of nothing. And yeah, but regardless what Sterling earlier mentioned, I wouldn't be still too doom and gloom with the situation. This was a bad game. A lot of kind of, how do you call it? Well, ref affected the situation, and then team didn't react the right way. I think these are fixable issues. Maybe they're not the refs. Hopefully they are fixable. But okay, I didn't mean it that way. but I still think Inter is right in the Scudetto race. There's no like glaring issue that we definitely gonna drop out of the race because we lost Napoli away.
Yes,
that's
I'll tell you the
case.
glaring issue. The glaring issue is we cannot beat our Scudetto rivals.
Well, let's see that in a few weeks or in a month when I will visit Giuseppe Meazza, and hopefully that will change by the time.
It reminds me of when there's like a Scudetto run-in between a few teams. For example, Gazzetta usually do like an editorial where they compare, like, for example, Inter's last 5 games against Juve's last 5 games and whatever, and then they score each game in difficulty and they give it a star rating out of 5, and it's like Inter play Napoli away, that's a 4.5 star out of 5 star difficulty game, and then they play Venezia at home and that's a 1 out of 5 difficulty, this kind of thing. It feels like, and I go back to the discussion we had prior to the Roma match, where we said the Roma match is a great litmus test, where it's a game that's relatively difficult on paper. Obviously, Roma are a big team on paper. Going to the Olimpico is, quote unquote difficult. It felt like a 3.5 star kind of difficulty game, and we overcame that test. But the second we were faced with, I don't know, what would you guys rate this Napoli game? 4 star out of 4?
I think it's a 5 star. The Napoli away
4.5 at best. If this is a 5 star, then what's like Juventus away? What's going to Anfield. What's
it's a
playing
5
Arsenal?
as well.
I think
They
those
are 5-star.
then those become like 7.
In the realm of Scudetto matches, this is probably the second toughest one on the fixture list, right? Away Napoli, brutal place to play. I agree. Away Juve is always the toughest game on the calendar. This is probably the second toughest with like this iteration
I
of
think
Napoli.
purely because you have to give room for there to be harder things like going away to Camp Nou, for example. I don't think you can give this Napoli game more than 4.5. Again, I personally consider this to be a pretty ordinary Napoli side, even though they are the defending champions. You know, they're missing Lukaku, they're missing Lobotka, 2 of the best players
They don't have
in
a
their
healthy
respective
striker.
possession. Exactly, they don't have a healthy striker. Højlund is out as well. So, yeah, I mean, you're playing a Napoli team which is severely impacted by injuries, coming off 3 losses in their last 5 games, including a historic spanking at the hands of some Dutchies. You know, yeah, for me, this is like at most a 4.5 star out of 5 star level of difficulty. But anyway, point is, the moment we came at a game harder than like a 3.5 star, we immediately failed the test again. And not to repeat what I was saying at the beginning of the episode, but why can't we ever hang on for just a draw? You know, like where's our like last minute equalizer to salvage the point, you know, and avoid these losses? Because I feel like if you're too easy to, if you lose too often, you kind of get used to it and you kind of let yourself go there too easily, you know. Whereas I feel like previous teams fought tooth and nail for that 1 point just to avoid losing, because there's like a certain pride involved in that. And this is partly linked to the whole thing I was saying about big players and players with X factor and stuff. And Irfan made a great example of like Alexis Sanchez and Vidal and these guys. Like, these guys hate losing and they'll do anything just to like avoid it, you know. And that's why you see like the veins pumping, the adrenaline, and players storming the pitch and celebrating over some shitty 96th minute equalizer. You know, this is why these celebrations and these wild kind of emotions play out, because the relief of avoiding loss, because they hate loss, they hate losing. Whereas I think some of these guys at Inter have become too comfortable with losing, and worse yet, it's come against direct rivals. They've become comfortable to like not win against direct rivals, and that sting of defeat has kind of faded a bit for some of them, I feel. So I feel all in all, hand in hand, it ends up being a pretty devastating combination to us, because these guys are not fighting. Like, again, I'm not gonna just hold too tightly to the Juventus result. Hilariously, I don't think Juventus have won a single game since they beat us, by the way, 7 or 8 games ago. But, you know, in the span of like 3 days, they clawed from 2 goals back in the span of, late in the game to salvage a result both times. And when's the last time we scored a last-minute equalizer? I feel like these players just gave up after the... I feel like they kind of functionally gave up when Napoli went 2-0 up, but you see they really gave up after like a 3-1, you know, after we kind of got the penalty back. Yeah, now we kind of go on and get a draw. We get dealt another sucker punch with the Anguissa goal, but there was still, 30 minutes left when Anguissa scored? Like 25 minutes left, wasn't there? And
30.
We didn't muster a single worthwhile chance in the remaining game. That is the sign of a team that's accepted their fate, and I find that to be incomprehensible. You know, I don't know what the cure for that is. I don't know what the remedy for that is at this stage.
My only disagreement with you is you have to think about the difficulty of these matches. And look, if I polled 100 Europeans and I asked them what's harder, away Juventus or away Barcelona, 99 of them are going to say away Barcelona. There is a difference between domestic and European competitions. For us, away Napoli is pretty much as hard of a fixture as you're going to get, bar away Juve, but it doesn't matter because we just keep flunking the tests. And even if we play Napoli at home, I'm not convinced we're going to succeed against them because we just cannot get this done. We are the complete opposites of the team that won the Scudetto 2 years ago, where we were a fortress that could not be broken down late at matches. Now, the second half of games is where we fall apart. The second half of games is where we lose. If we don't get a lead in the first half, I know we're not winning a football match, and it's a depressing thought. We're short on time, so let's just briefly talk about Fiorentina, because we do have a midweek Serie A match this week. Fiorentina still have to play today. I believe they play Bologna. By the time we play Fiorentina midweek, I cannot even guarantee you Pioli is still going to be their manager, because this is a Fiorentina team that hasn't won a league match since August. They are in all sorts of poor form. They have, 4 losses and 2 draws since their last Serie A win. It's not been pretty for them. They had a very busy mercato. They made a lot of changes to the squad. They brought in Mikko's love child, Dzeko. They made a few changes in the midfield, but it has not worked. The hiring of Pioli has not worked. And the result is we've got what is a comfy bounce back spot against a really struggling side. We need to be able to take advantage of this to get this thing back on track. If you want to offer any thoughts on the game as you provide your prediction, feel free. But I will start with Mikko. Tell me how Dzeko's going to score a brace.
I don't know. Has he played too much in Syria? To be honest, I haven't followed Fiorentina too much, but he played in the Conference League, I believe. No,
he's only made 1 start in the league. He's appeared in 6 games.
Yeah, maybe he's their Euro guy, but I expect a strong response from the team. I hope Kivu can kind of get his thoughts through that stop wasting energy on stuff you can't affect anymore. You need to look forward, and I hope and believe that he accomplishes that, and we are able to get back on track right away. Like I said, I haven't followed Fiorentina apart from the results, which have been terrible. I don't know how they are so terrible, but nevertheless, they've done really poorly. Of course, Moise Kean is always he was great last season, so there's always a possibility that he comes out and do some damage. But I expect us to win this match, and I believe this is a home match since we have two away matches already. So I assume this is a home match. So we're gonna come back, and we are going to win this quite well. Maybe not comfortably, but I'll say we're gonna win this.
Can I get a score?
Yeah. Well, let's say 2-0. Bunny will score, and then Carlos Augusto will score another one from the corner.
I'll say we win a nervy game 2-1. I'm going to say Inter will finally shut me up and score a late dramatic winner after throwing away a 1-goal lead. First goal was scored by Lautaro. Of course, actually, you know what? Dzeko will not score, but Keane will score. And then I'll give it to not Barella because he's shit.
Frattesi, late goal. Frattesi.
Diouf.
Frattesi? No. I think it's someone like
Luis Enrique.
Sucic, Pio. No,
Joseph Martinez.
We'll give it to Bastoni. How about that?
Sterling, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this should be on paper a match that we win fairly easily if you look at the way that Fiorentina started the season. I mean, they're actually in the relegation zone right now, which is obscene. I surely don't think they're going to be relegated, but it just shows how bad things have been going for them in the league. But, if you look at their performances, especially the one against Milan, they really weren't bad in that match, and they could have easily gotten a point, and they probably should have. So I don't think this is going to be an easy match for us, especially coming off the back of this loss against Napoli. There will be some nerves there, and I'm hoping that Pioli is still the coach because, God forbid, they have a new manager bounce as well. I think that could certainly result in us dropping points. So with that being said, I will say that this is going to be a 3-2 win for Inter. We're going to continue to have some issues. We're going to let up a couple of goals, but ultimately we will find a way to win.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with 0-0 on this 0-0 draw because, like Jay, kind of hilariously was struggling to find a goal scorer for us. I also, without Thuram, am really struggling to find who the hell's going to score goals for us. So I'm going to go with the 0-0 disappointing draw because you know what? At this point, I feel like regardless of who Fiorentina's manager is, where I'm sitting right now, Fiorentina want this win more than we do. So until our guys prove otherwise, I'm going to go with the draw.
I'll go 1-0, but sack header. Jay, what's your hot betting tip? I think Milan play Atalanta, if my memory serves correct.
What, midweek?
Yeah, that's right. They play on Tuesday. Milan, Atalanta.
Yeah, there you go. Give the people what they want.
Finally, it's time. You know, they've been undefeated for a long time, avoiding loss, but it's time all that ends, and Milan will break Atalanta's unbeaten streak with a comprehensive 3-1 victory. Goals from Scamacca and then Leao hat-trick. Did you know that Atalanta hasn't lost yet? I think they've drawn like 8 games or something.
Yeah, they were losing very late to Cremonese yesterday, and then Brescianini scored a late goal to tie things up and salvage them against Cremonese.
Wonder what that feels like.
Irfan's top 4 prediction lives on.
That's right. It was looking a little tenuous, but I think we'll get there.
Well, that was depressing. Thank you all for listening. Appreciate it. We'll catch you all sometime after the Fiorentina game to hopefully recap a win. Until then, Mikko, take us away.
Despite everything, Forza Inter.
That's right. See you guys.
Come on.